Hi, everyone. Welcome to Activating Genius, how to get your child into a top college and set for a happy, successful life. Today, we have the good fortune of interviewing Carol Kristen. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Activating Genius, how to get your child into a top college and set for a happy, successful life. Today, we have the good fortune of interviewing Carol Kristen, who is the author of What Color is Your Parachute for Teens? And the co-author of Transform Interests into Jobs. Both resources provide structured activities to help teens and young adults make successful transitions from school to work. Carol is a master teacher of the parachute career decision-making process. What Color is Your Parachute for Teens has been translated into 5 languages and is a global bestseller. Carol's mission is to teach teens and young adults how to create lives they love, financed by work they enjoy. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. It's delightful to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Your book has been an amazing classic in the field for a long time now, so I'm really honored.
Well, not my book. I think you're thinking of the very original Parachute, What Color is Your Parachute? And that was by Richard Bowles, who I had the good fortune to have as a mentor. But my book actually was first published in 2006, and there have been now 3 editions. The last edition was 2017, and there'll be a 2020.
Okay, great. Excellent. So, Carol, tell us a little bit about, a young 8th grader who wants to explore career options so that by the time they apply to college, they know what they want to study. What advice would you give such a young person?
Such a young person is to have people help them investigate absolutely every job that pops into their mind as maybe interesting.
Okay.
Because one of the things we don't do enough of is to say, there's a lot of pieces of who you are, and then that kind of falls together into a puzzle that we can use to help you figure out what kind of work you want. But that's a decision-making technique. That takes a lot of research. How much time is an 8th grader willing to spend? And then how can we support them to make the best use of their time? And one of the best uses is, once we know how much time they're willing to put into it, of course we can lard that over with saying, the more time you spend on this, the happier you're going to be as a young adult. But then they've got to learn something about themselves and something about the world of work, but particularly focusing on what are their interests and what fields do those interests represent. And parents can help, but maybe the best thing they can do is say, hey, maybe you could meet with your aunt or uncle or cousin or whoever. Adults know the value of mentors, and so we need to have probably several adults checking in with an 8th grader saying, okay, what do you need to know next? Do you want to talk to someone? Do you want to read something? But we can't make it so dire. I think adults have a very strange view of how this decision-making process is made, and they far too much focus on the outcome. To go from clueless to knowing what you want to do is a process that is not intended to have a one-item target.
Can you explain a little more about what you're saying?
It is that when adults ask young people what do they want to be, and they tend to do that twice in their lives. They tend to ask when they're in kindergarten, and then they tend to ask when they're about 17 and a half. And nothing has been in between then. And so adults seem to have this, they're very nervous about helping young people find something, and they've got to find the right thing. And my gosh, there's so much pressure put on young people to choose. And we never give them the information they need to make those choices well. 2% of adults are working at what their 18-year-old selves thought they would be working at as adults.
That's 2%. Wow.
2%. It is statistically insignificant. Okay, but the buzz is, so-and-so knew what they wanted to do from the time they were in the second grade. Ooh, I haven't. I don't know. Oh, I don't know. And the older we let young people get before we give them the tools to make these decisions, the more they're going to shut down with, you ask me what I'm going to do, and it's April of my senior year, and I'm going to tell you I'm going to college, or I'm going in the military. I'm going to tell you something even if I know I'm not doing it, because I'm going to tell you something. Okay, so when we look at the decision-making tools about constructing a life after high school, what is being taught? It's almost nothing. So, and I think when you and I chatted before, I mentioned that I like to use quotes in my book, and one of the quotes is by Anna Quindlen, who says, it's much harder to craft a life than a resume.
Yes.
And so what we have then is classes on how to craft a resume. How many classes are there in how to craft a life?
Right. No,
and yet we know one of the hooks that we can use with young people, because I have it in Chapter 12 of What Color's Your Parachute, is looking at kind of what life you want. And for a lot of young people, once they kind of start defining, oh, my goodness, I could then to finance that life through the work they do, they then become more interested. Oh, what kind of work am I going to do? I want this kind of lifestyle. I want to be able to go to Moab in the fall and ride my mountain bike, And that's not someone who, unless you live in Moab and work at Carl's Jr., that's not going to be someone who lives in California and works at Carl's Jr. probably. And so, we need to kind of help young people look ahead, but help them look ahead realistically. No one gets a dream job on their first whack. You talk to people who are adults and who have been lucky enough to have what they think is a dream job. And that job is their, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. You have to get to know a field from the inside before you kind of have like a chessboard of, okay, now I'm going to move here, now I'm going to move there, and wow, this is my dream job. And so we seem to put this pressure on young people that they've got to get it right. No, they don't. If they land in a field they love, hey, terrific. So does that explain that a little bit better?
Yes. Yeah, so it's like you're helping them in the process and understanding that it's going to take time. It's not going to be like on the first shot. It's going to take time.
It takes, when I taught group process, there's a parachute in my book. Richard Bowles used a flower, but what it consists of is how to organize what you are looking for in a job in terms of your people environment, your work environment, your goals, your salary, what are your best transferable skills, what do you have to know to do this job. And those are some of the pieces that the individual needs to know.
Right.
And so it can take up to 20 hours just to go through the exercises, and there are discovery exercises in the book. I condensed Richard Bowles' parachute process into 50 pages. And so it's pretty tight, but it gets you there. But the thing that everybody has to understand is nobody gets a job for life.
Right.
What I think young people are more interested in is, hey, what am I going to do as a 20-something? And that is realistic. We're looking at what's their first job out of school at whatever level that is. But the need to retool and reschool for people to maintain viability in their jobs is so intense that that's all we can do is to say, hey, we can teach you a process. You can learn a process so you know enough to steer your career. But that's a totally new field to you or to the public really called career development, and it means you're in charge.
Right.
Yeah, so don't come moaning to me when you can't figure out what you want to do. Because I think when you tell people, I mean, you know this, look at what you do. You tell people, we have a process by which you can figure out what you want to do.
Right.
Oh, you have a test? No, actually, there's nothing like a test. There are interest inventories, but those are just interest inventories.
Right, right.
So the steps in career development, which will either help young people make career choice or job hunt successfully, and everybody kind of curls their lip at job hunting, It's like, hey, honey, you can't get a job in this field. I don't care what your training is. I mean, all of us grew up on these stories, of PhDs driving taxi cabs. And, and then in 2013, it was young people with new bachelor's degrees, 400,000 of whom were working frontline in fast food.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know how to get a job doing what you want to do, this is going to be a very sorry tale of no career.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like, you're helping students begin a process and go through a process so that they can understand themselves.
Yes, and that process looks a little at life. And because one of the things in the center of what I do, the parachute, which pulls all that information together, are goals. Because, sometimes if people don't keep their goals, what they kind of overarchingly want to accomplish, you can get a job and never meet your goals because you're not kind of keeping your eye on those things. So goals can be personal and professional, but they are the things that kind of, they're the carrot for a lot of us in how we weave our way through life achieving our goals. And so they're a big part of putting together that picture.
Yeah, it's tricky because, young adults, high school students, they often don't think about the future. And then, when I work with them, I try to get them to think about what they enjoy doing and what they're attracted to, what clubs, what activities. But I can also feel that their parents have this pressure because, the child can go to college. It's so expensive these days. They can spend several thousands of dollars studying something and then later change their mind or go in undecided. And so the process that you're talking about sounds good, but it also sounds a bit fuzzy. And I'm wondering if there are clear
for someone, reading the book, it's step by step. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. So, first you have to put together what it is that the young person wants. And those are in those 7 categories. And what Richard Bowles found was that these were the categories, this was what people knew about themselves who became successful job hunters. But on the other hand, maybe that's because it's this information that tends to form a lot of the questions that are asked in interviews. So those two things go together. So first there is what we need to know, and then there is how do you match that up with the world of work? How do you get a job goal? And both parts of that are covered in the book. It's just my point, one of my points in talking with you today is to sort of look at some of the intangibles. One of those is social acuity. We may now have the first generation that has arthritic thumbs before 30, but we also have nearly a generation and a half of young people who have almost no social acuity. Yeah. And social acuity is that the fancy word for, can you read people? Can you read a room? How good are your social interaction skills? And these are all things that are prized out in the world of work, and yet our young people spend very, very little time acquiring those skills because they spend so much time in front of computer screens.
Right. That's a very good point.
One of the things that my young clients used to play a game of how many of us can think of, and it was how many of us can think of ways in which our education undermines the world of work. And you can, play with that all you want. So when I interviewed people, employers and business people for the book, the most common comment from business people was, there is no bridge between education and the world of work.
Right.
And we just it's almost like high school is a moat, with alligators. And it's like, wait a minute, you're expecting a certain percentage of your high school graduates in this area will be in your workforce.
Right.
And what have you done for them? And different communities have different resources, and they have different programs. I have only found a couple that make me jump up and down and yell and scream, woohoo. Charlotte Mecklenburg, back in North Carolina, has some wonderful apprenticeships going with some German and Swiss companies. And the reason I put little asterisks around those terms is that Switzerland and Germany have one of the lowest youth unemployment rates in the world. Switzerland is first at 2.6, and Germany is maybe fourth on the list at 6-something. But I think it's Uzbekistan has, just right after Switzerland in terms of, it's a third world country, or we think of it as a third world country, and yet it has a very low youth unemployment rate. So they're doing something right, and we're not. With our employment rate that is nearly 10% unemployment rate for youth. And youth is defined as 16 to 24, by the way.
Oh, okay. 16 to 24. Okay, that makes sense.
And so one of the things that the 8th grader has going for them is that their parents can set up not only little internships, small internships with but almost every community has a whole bunch of nonprofit organizations that deal with different kinds of subjects. And so young people can, maybe check out whether or not this is an area of interest doing those sorts of things with nonprofits. They can also, I think many of our communities, we could sort of formalize some of the service clubs and find people for young adolescents or young adults to job shadow with or to have information interviews with. But we need to make it known that this is the kind of information that young people really need in order to make accurate decisions about how they're going to spend their education dollars.
Right.
Well, that's the whole idea of coming up with a plan for after high school, is that you can merge your career goals and education goals to give you what you want.
Right. Well, I'm going back to the 8th grader again, and you said that your book goes through a step-by-step process. How long does that process take? And if someone starts the process later, like in, say, 11th grade, can they still do that?
Again, 20 minutes a day, and you can really do miracles. So if most young people aren't even presented career programs until, late the 11th grade or the 12th grade. And so it can be done. It just is, again, it's a lot of dedication. But with that 8th grader, about all you need to do, I favor, of all the interest inventories, I favor the Self-Directed Search by John Holland, because that gives, along with favorite subjects in school, that code gives you some idea of not only subject interest, but also values, the preferred people environments, and a little bit about the kind of skills you use. And so the 8th grader just needs to do more career exploration. YouTube, but parents are going to have to sit with the child, or someone's going to need to sit with the child while they explore YouTube videos, because that can lead to disaster if there aren't adults around. But the career counselors that I've talked with lately are just amazed when we direct them to career and occupational videos on YouTube, what's out there. And so there's a lot, but it has to be followed up with real-world stuff, and especially for an 8th grader. Find someone who's under 23 for them to talk to. Because that under 23 person is still 10 years older than they are.
Right.
Yeah. And that's true. You know, even with an 18-year-old, don't look for real confirming information for that 18-year-old to come from a 54-year-old. Get them as young a person as possible to talk to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrific to talk with a successful person mid-career or even late career or even when they're retired. Those are great sources of information. But who's the youngest you can find, because they have the most recent war stories, battle scars.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but everybody needs to understand the value of confirming what's read. I mean, we have 30,000 different jobs that are happening in this country. And ONET, the government's career information site, is very good, but it has less than 900 jobs, and that's the largest we know of. So there's an awful lot that doesn't get, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, doctor, lawyer, postal person, teacher. Those are the over and over and over again types of jobs, but there's all kinds, and do those kinds exist where you are, which is, again, something... it's probably going to be more of interest to that 11th grader than to the 8th grader, but geography is, and it's one of the things that we ask people to look at, both how long are they willing to commute and where would they like to live. Geography has an awful lot to do with job opportunity. And so I think that's the kind of thing that if you're talking about an 11th grader, do you really want to go away out of your community college? If you want to come back and live in this community, it takes 3 years to find the right cleaners. So this habit we have of sending young people off, unless they really come back and do summer jobs that are in their field area or internships or stuff, if they want to live in an area, they need to get to know that area. That's their laboratory. That's their job market. And the fun thing about doing work with either your 18-year-old or your 11th grader is that you can get them to start thinking about, okay, if you didn't live here, where would you like to live? And then can we get you to school in that area? Can we get you internships or summer jobs in that area? So you start building, because it just takes people so long to make career connections. But once you have them, your career goes so much faster. And so I think the way we kind of duplicate that, again, getting back to that, adults know the value of mentors, but we need to pull together some career mentors for young people. So somebody's in charge of, have you gotten to know 3 of your favorite fields and 3 jobs within each of those favorite fields? Again, that's before you can narrow down to a job cluster, let's say, as a career goal, you really need to look at an awful lot of them. I say that they're like clothing, and we all know how when we go to shopping for clothing, it takes, sometimes a rack full before you find something that both looks good and feels good and makes you happy. And and that's the same thing with jobs, is you have to try them on, and the best way to try them on is not to train for them and spend tens of thousands of dollars doing that, and then you decide you don't want to do it. And what we know, I mean, because there haven't been any sort of definitive studies, but there's been enough ticking of the boxes that we know that young people who go on to higher education with a plan complete that higher education in greater numbers than young people who do not have plans.
Okay.
When I taught career planning in the management department at Sonoma State, I had mostly panicking graduating seniors, but sometimes freshmen or sophomores would take the class, and they wanted to find out what they wanted to major in. And when I checked in with them, and this was only about a half a dozen in the years that I taught, but they would always be bragging to me that they had never changed their majors. And that's a really good brag, because the average college student changes majors 3 times, and that costs approximately $10,000 per change.
Oh, wow.
So the average college student starts $30,000 in debt. because they don't know what they want to do. So we can really monetize this thing. I mean, a college education is a classic investment tool. It's money spent in the present in the likelihood of more money in the future. But that future isn't 15 years down the road. Young people need to think about how will this study that I am financing, either through parents or loans, is it going to pay off in 3 to 5 years? Because it has to.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know people who have loans for years and years. 3 to 5 years is pretty good.
Yeah. The formula, the easiest formula is 2/3. You have to be able to earn 2/3 of your likely starting salary. I mean, you can only borrow 2/3 of your likely starting salary. Again, why it is so important to have some idea of, the kind of jobs you're going for, because if your job, is going to pay $60,000, that means you can borrow 40. That's it. And not every job starts at that. Either a university job or a certificate training job or whatever. It doesn't matter the amount borrowed. It can only be 2/3, and that's again a lot of young people will see that, if I can't go to university, then I'm not going to have the career I want. No. Back up. Most many community colleges, you can learn a technical part of the field you're interested in. So you can enter that field through that technical part, look around, see where you next want to go, and then you've saved some money by working, and you aren't totally borrowing money. I love the fact that, you can make as much money as having your AA degree and your RN as you can your BS degree and your RN. But hospitals are now trying to boost up. They have a percent that I think it's 80 that they're trying to do their RNs to have BSs, but they will actually supply the classes for those. Right. So we don't look enough at higher education or plans for our young people and look at the consumer side of it, which just drives me crazy. I mean, we're a country that looks up the best bargain for cat food or cars or vacations or airline fares or whatever it is, and we go brain dead when it comes to looking at the ROI of higher education. And,
it's really interesting that happens.
There's just, there are trust fund babies and there's the 1%. That's nice, but the rest of parents are working pretty hard. And it's another thing that 8th grader has. If they are spending some good time ferreting out, they can really kind of plan their high school in order that it really supports. And that's something that our, sort of 11th hour, 11th grader, you can still get some experience between your junior and senior year, and you can do all that. But that 8th grader can really take advantage of what is an actual economic theory, which is option cost zero. And while you have a roof over your head or while your child is there and you're providing for them, this is the best time to really take a look at what's everything they've ever wanted to do and get to know that and get to know what it takes, because most of us never have that kind of option again.
You don't. Yeah, it's a very good point. And, it's interesting because there's a couple things students do. One of the main things they do is they go to summer camps in areas that they're interested. And the other thing they do is internships with, adult professionals in the field. And do you feel like there is a benefit to one over the other, or should they do both? What's your recommendation?
They should do both. It should go from, internet research or paper and pencil research, whatever we want to call that, to talking to someone, to doing a job shadow. And for heaven's sakes, let's not commit poor people to 8-hour days on job shadowing. Four is good, and then if your young person is really eager, invite them back for another 4, and then the young person needs to do some sort of internship or summer job or volunteer or whatever. Everybody I've talked to, and that's in all different kind of fields, whether it's the professional or the schools, 40 is what I hear. You need to have been around that work for 40 hours before you can make a good decision. So think about how few young people have that opportunity.
Yeah. And
so that's, again, something that, I hope parents and you professionals will do, is to start talking about, when you go to speak to the Sunrise Lions or whoever, that we talk about, hey, we need to formalize how our young people get career education information. Right now, we treat it like Fort Knox, and we don't have these easy, fluid ways of getting career information. Every community has $60,000 jobs that pay $60,000. It's just that, oh, no, really? Yeah, really. Then let's, by having young people come back into the communities they know and fulfilling professional jobs, everybody benefits from that. Because a lot of times those young people who come back say, I think I'm going to run for school board. We could have done more to prepare me for, and just all the wonderful things that people who have grown up in an area can contribute to that area. So it's we've been so short-sighted about it, and that just grieves me terribly.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because, you mentioned that formula in terms of student loans and what they're going to be making in their first job. That's very important. I think a lot of kids and even parents don't think about that, but I do feel it's very important. And then to actually get the real-life experience, like you said, through the internship and going through a step-by-step process. 40 hours is I think that's a really helpful time frame to help, understand.
Because, it's at that point one should have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if someone is still enthusiastic about it, then okay, good. But and that, I think, in the best of all possible worlds, again, looking at how do you. So many young people these days, their lives are so overscheduled. How are we going to get them that 40 hours? And our 8th grader has certainly advantages over our 11th grader, but it can still be done. It just needs to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because I think a lot of the careers that are available today, they weren't available even 20 years ago.
Oh, yes. Though one of the things I do like, again, about Holland and his 6 occupational themes is that, you've heard this, people go, oh, we don't even know where the jobs of the future are going to come from. Actually, we do. It's going to be from one of these 6 occupational themes. And that's why for a young person to kind of get to know their theme, try that on, and then they change. Young men are almost, 94% are, which is realistic, working with the realistic. Often they want to work with their hands, and that is kind of harder and harder these days, where we're pushing more and more, the computer, the programmer, the coder, the blah, blah. Though coders do work with their hands, but not everyone is going to be satisfied with that. So, again, thinking about that life in the 20s, and if you want to do something really physical when you're young, it's a good time to do it, and it's really good to have transitioned out of that by 15 years later. So there's a long game there, too, in addition to looking at just, what are you going to do to finance yourself and your education in your 20s. But then there's this longer arc of, and this is, I think, especially true for young people who say, oh, I don't know what I can choose. Well, in decision making, we have ways of making that happen. But there's another thing, and that's looking at decades. There was a young man graduated probably right about 2000 from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in business. Went back, very successful investment banker in New York for 10 years, and after 10 years he retired and to form his Irish rock band. I mean, that's a long-term planning, and he had to be good at being an investment banker. So this thing of, you hear the dichotomy all the time, you're going to love what you do or you're going to be poor. No. Yeah. Because if you love what you're going to do, you're going to do it well enough to be successful. So as long as we haven't chosen a total, low-paying dead end, this dichotomy just doesn't, it doesn't encompass reality. And young people need to know that too. I mean, because I try and ground young people in, because they do not know money at all, and so it's like 20 by 20 is you're earning $20 an hour by the time you're 20, which is $40,000 annually. 25 by 25 is $25 an hour by the time you're 25. $50,000. 30 by 30 is $30 an hour by the time you're 30, and that's a $60,000. So, to try and get an idea of this is a progression, and it's really hard to live anywhere without a minimum of $60,000. And if you've seen all those, this is what it takes to rent a two-bedroom apartment, whatever. Those are all pretty depressing these days.
Yeah, and I think there's some research done as well where it's something like $60,000 or $75,000 a year. If you make that much, then you are at peace on some level, and making
because
more
you're not
money,
scrambling. Yeah,
you're not scrambling, and you're even making more money can actually backfire or cause more stress if it becomes a stressful process. So it's not that you shouldn't, but that's kind of like the minimum necessary to feel at peace. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Neither neither extreme is going to be very comfortable for most people.
Right.
And then, that's another thing that everybody needs to look at is, the numbers of good jobs are dwindling. And technology takes away and technology brings, but it's just overall the world is minus in the job area, and we've done a really bad job of matching. I mean, those 6 million job openings that exist in the United States today are all for mid-skill level jobs or mid-level skills. And so we haven't been turning, we've been pushing out high skills, we've been allowing low skills, but we haven't been doing a lot to train people towards those mid-level skills. And, employers are out there.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's been wonderful to have you today. I understand you have a free gift for our listeners.
Yes. One of the things I use as a conversation starter between young people and their parents is, what's your plan? And it gives a list of both questions and kind of ideas to think over that can start young people and their parents on this conversation of how do I get a job I will enjoy? And for the parents of what are the steps to helping my student get a job that they will enjoy, because it's possible, but it doesn't happen very often without a plan.
Right. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Carol. It's been amazing to have you today.
Well, thank you so much for thinking of me.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, and we'll stay in touch.
Yes, that'd be lovely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.